So on Saturday evening, Mass Effect fans had their worst fear confirmed to them. Bioware are officially done with Mass Effect for now. No DLC is happening, and there's no sequels in the foreseeable future. Now this is truly upsetting news for myself, and as a huge fan of the series, you know, it's devastating. It's been pretty much a decade since I first played it. It's a decade since the first one came out, and I got into it about a few months before Mass Effect 2 came out, which is pretty good timing. And there's not many games I've replayed, but Mass Effect is one I've replayed several times. And then you have Andromeda. Poor Andromeda. My thoughts on Andromeda haven't really changed since release. I really enjoyed the game. It made the whole exploring, unknown space and trying to make a home of it compelling and rewarding. Seeing your colonies get built across planets and the overall sense of mystery with the Ket and the Remnant and trying to find out what was going on was genuinely enjoyable. And in some ways it felt like Mass Effect 1. The wonder of all the species of the galaxy, visiting alien worlds and civilization, seeing like a citadel type construct for the first time again. All that was incredible and really felt like Mass Effect 1. Andromeda got the whole just exploring the unknown thing spot on. And new races and stuff like that. So what wasn't done well? The obvious is the animations, of course, and not just the facial animations, which got a lot of coverage, but other stuff, such as just general character animations and jankiness, and little hiccups including PB's infamous ability to fire a gun backwards. Another misstep was that they opened up the world probably a little bit too much. Bigger isn't always better, and as I've seen many say in recent years, Bioware and other developers need to stop making single-player RPGs that feel like MMOs. Because in the end, going around the map just clearing off areas and ticking off quests felt like a chore. There was a lot of side content in the game which was good, some of it was very good, but there's also just so much unnecessary fetch and grabbing. And say, if you're just ticking off a list and it's just pointless missions that are nothing personal to you, then what's the point? It's a problem that other RPGs have suffered from, and still do, but in Andromeda it just felt more apparent than ever. There's one occasion where I can remember there's this NPC, he wants you to get something from a store on the Angaran world, which I can't quite remember the name of right now, and basically he needs you to go in and get it for him because he's not allowed in. So he asks you to go in, you get it for him, you come back with it, and then when you get back to him he's like, oh, there's something else I want, can you get me this? So you go back in and you come back and then he has something else, and it's just again and again, and these are separate quests by the way in your quest log, just repeating. It felt for a second I thought it was a repeatable quest. It wasn't, it was just about 3 or 4 in a row and then you're done. Just back and forward, in and out the city. It was clearly just padding out the area. And although it did have some sort of sense of building the world and the lore, because basically the city is like a sort of haven for Angara that's safe, and basically they have a one in one out policy. So basically there's Angara that are pissed off because they've had to give up spaces to let humans come in who have turned up obviously, and all the other races of the Andromeda Initiative. And so story wise it was part of that, was that the trader wasn't allowed in and you were, and it built on that. But because it was just a boring fetch and grab, and just the way it was done was just so sloppy and drawn out, that it just kind of lost all impact that it would have had. You could have done it as maybe go and get this for me, come back, and while you're there, the trader could make some comment about why you're getting it and stuff like that, and build on the story a bit and say how it's bad, how they can't get in and stuff like that, and build on that lore a bit and make it more lore intensive and have a bit more of a story to it than just a simple go and get it, come back, get another one, go back, get another one. And this has happened, a few times throughout the game. And these mundane tasks that felt like a chore just brought down the overall enjoyment of the game. Now there's an example I'm going to use, and I hate using it because it just seems like everyone uses this game as an example, as something that was just amazing, like it's the second coming. The Witcher 3, it was a bloody good game. The Witcher 3 was a milestone for RPGs. Well, even that had some faults. But I think developers really need to take note of what Witcher 3 did. The way it handled the story, and it weaved the side content into that story and the world, And, you know, when you explore the world, everything felt like it was one big package put together, not kind of, here's the main story, here's side content, and it's boring and repetitive. The side content in Witcher 3 was enjoyable, really, really, you know, interesting, good story. And it's something that developers of RPGs really need to learn from. You know, how good an RPG isn't dependent on how many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of quests you can shove in and how many rolling lands of fields and stuff, because if it's just empty land and you're just going there picking up something and taking it back to someone, how's that enjoyable? You know, you can spend hours and hundreds of hours grinding in a game doing these quests again and again and again, and just kind of be at the end of it be like, oh thank God I'm done with it, you know. Whereas, you know, The Witcher 3, when I was done with it, I mean, I spent a good month on that game. And the whole time I was totally absorbed into it, you know, and genuinely enjoying it. And I was upset, you know, when it comes to the end of it, because I was upset that I was done and there was nothing more I could do. And I was itching for more, and I wanted DLC, and I really wanted more, you know. Other games, Andromeda included in this, you know, I was burnt out by the end of it, and I was just glad to move on to other games. And that's not a good sign. Of course, side content is side content, the butter in your sandwich. The main filling, of course, is the story, and that's what you should remember. And that is something that I thoroughly enjoyed in Andromeda. As I mentioned, you know, the whole mystery of what the Ket were doing and who the Remnant were was compelling, and it kept me guessing as I journeyed the galaxy. The race against time to beat the Archon to Meridian and stop him at the end was well structured, and it was supported by pretty good characters. And no, they're never going to hold up to the original Normandy crew, but they came pretty damn close. While Ryder himself, or herself, didn't quite have the same kind of punch or iconic feel of Shepard, the rest of the crew of the Tempest were well written and enjoyable to find out about. You know, that was something that I felt in Andromeda was much more in depth compared to the original trilogy. You know, even minor characters like Doctor, like the Doctor on the ship, Dr. Lexi, and the engineer Gil, you know, they're minor characters that in the original trilogy were just kind of there, you know. Dr. Chuck was, and I think Adams was the engineer, were there, and you had a little bit of conversation with them, but that was it. Whereas, you know, in Andromeda, they had proper roles in the story. They were there a lot in cutscenes talking to them about stuff, and they had, you know, involvement in what was happening. They had their own little side backstories and troubles that you helped them with a bit. It was really, really well done, that was. I remember basically Lexi's upset. She thinks that everyone kind of hates her and kind of sees her as just doing her job, but she genuinely cares for the people on the ship. She's worried people don't realise that. And, you know, just really really nicely done stuff. And the rest of the crew as well were really good. You know, really well done crewmates. Like I said, that they won't ever hold up to people like Garrus and Liara and Rex, of course. But, you know, they do a pretty good job of it, you know. And although I didn't really get to know all of the crew, and that's something I need to do again in future playthroughs, the ones I did spend time getting to know, I you know, really liked getting to know. PB, of course, was my romance, and she was pretty interesting. Then Drac, you know, Drac at first seemed like he was just another Rex, but he wasn't. He was a lot more. There's a lot more to him than that. And by the end of it, I really, really liked Drac. And Joel, of course, was intriguing to find out. Joel was basically the representation of his entire race. You know, this new race you meet with the Angara. And although he won't beat Garrus, of course, no one will ever beat Garrus, Joel come pretty close. So all these squad mates, of course, were built on with their loyalty quests they had, which is a feature they brought back from Mass Effect 2, which was really good. Mass Effect 2, I thought, the loyalty system. You could do like a loyalty quest with them. It was like a personal mission for them, and it kind of got you on, them on your side. And while they didn't bring that back in 3, because that was kind of the point of 3 was the Reaper War. So I got time to deal with your personal problems. I need to fight the Reapers, and that was the main focus. While that wasn't a thing in 3, they brought it back for this one, obviously, because they're introducing a new world and everything, so they have time to do this kind of thing. Story-wise, it didn't make sense in 3. This one, it does. It really does. So they had these loyalty quests back. but they improved upon it a lot with, you know, multi-part quest lines. You know, it wasn't just one mission, do it over. It was multiple quests that all kind of seemed trivial at first, but built up and built up and built up to the final ending of them in this final mission. And they went across multiple planets and stuff, and they had a bit, you know, very personal touch to each one about that character. Some of them were kind of meh, others were really good. Ones that stand out for me are Drax one was fucking cool. He just smashes through a wall into a load of enemies and just like hi, and just, you know, shows off his badassery. The Liam one was just funny just because all the references and stuff and just the funny shit that happens. And others, you know, stand out not as much, but those are the two main ones that stand out for me. And all this kind of culminated in a movie night, which felt like a mini sort of Citadel DLC. Basically, this was like you kind of did in trivial things. Oh, you've got to get a movie, you've got to go sort this out, get drinks for it, get snacks for it. It felt very trivial and a little bit fetch and grabby and a little bit kind of checklisty, but not too much because it was kind of very light-hearted. And ultimately, it culminates in basically the crew of the ship watching a film together, and you have a very nice time together, and you kind of make jokes with each other. It felt like a very, like I say, mini version of the Citadel DLC within one quest for like 10 minutes. But I think it felt like at that point that we don't know this crew's mates enough to, they don't deserve a full DLC and something like Citadel was. Citadel was just incredible fan service, yes, but also just a really nice send-off to the series. This is at the start, well, it would have been the start, the site bigger, and so, you know, just a little hint of that kind of family, and it really made me feel that they were a family, very much like the crew of the Normandy, you know. And it was intriguing to really get to know those characters. You know, it really was. Then of course you had the villain of the piece with the Archon, who was a very formidable and intimidating presence. You know, he was scary, and he was a very clear threat to you. And although, you know, it might seem kind of sort of cliched and a sort of safe bet to have a kind of very clear, bold enemy like this, you know, games these days seem to have all this kind of backstabbery, someone else is pulling the strings kind of thing like that, and you don't necessarily know who the main enemy is. This is just, this guy's the enemy, stop him. But I think the game needed that as like an introduction to the new galaxy and setting, much like Mass Effect 1 had with Saren. You know, although the Reapers were there in the background, Saren was the clear enemy of Mass Effect 1 because you needed something to be fighting against to drive you through the story, through this new world as they introduce you to everything. So that's what they needed to do. It was hinted that the Kett were far bigger than the Archon, and basically at one point you hear this like audio log thing where basically the Archon was sent there as like a scouting group to scout the Andromeda galaxy, or certainly the Hedis cluster where the game's set. Basically the Kett themselves are a massive galaxy-wide, and potentially more than that, empire that are massive and have their all basically there's loads of Archons, all have their own sort of battalions of troops, and they're all serving an emperor of the Kett. So yeah, it's pretty cool. The Archon was massive, and he's just kind of like a general for the Emperor himself, and it's a real fucking shame we'll never get to see that. Possibly, I don't know, we might not see that ever, you know, that craziness, you know, awesome size of the enemy. It's not necessarily, the Reapers were amazing because they were just a mystery, and ultimately I think that's why Mass Effect 3's ending was so disappointing, was when you have something as big and unknown as what the Reapers were, and they said they were inconceivable what their purpose was. When you have that purpose and you explain what they are, it sucks because nothing's going to meet expectations. Whereas if you just say they're a big fucking empire but they're massive, good luck, that's kind of a bit more realistic and not necessarily going to let you down. But it's like, okay, how am I going to deal with this fucking great big empire? And that would have been so cool to see in later games, you know. And I bet the plan was, as more games went on, to get more races and build up alliances and stuff, and by the end of it, probably in the third game of this new trilogy, you would have taken on the Empire. Well, whether we'll ever see that now, I don't know. Of course, the Remnant, of course, were another thing. You know, this mysterious race who made all this cool technology and stuff that's still around, and all are basically responsible for, you know, Meridian and all that at the end. Was going to have a much clearer role in the end, and basically they made the Angara and stuff like that, and they were like gods kind of, and that was going to have a massive role in the future. Maybe you're going to meet them and team up with them against the Kett or something like that, and it just kind of didn't happen. You know, it's set up for something that ultimately might not happen. It's really sad. So like I said, the greatest upset is that everything you did in Andromeda was building towards something, you know, building colonies to settle on and a future for Andromeda, you know, your alliances with the Angara and proving that humanity are, you know, a worthy friend, and defeating the Archon at the end, and, you know, claiming a stake in the galaxy for the future of not just humanity but all the other races and the Angara as well. And what the future held was something that was so awesome at the end of it. I loved the ending because it was so kind of chilled and relaxed. Once you defeat the Archon, you just kind of walked around talking to everyone, saying bye and hopes for the future and stuff. And you hear about the other arcs that are coming, of course, with favourites such as Quarians and Drells, Elcors, Volus, some of the other races, and a few other ones. Sorry, Vorcha, I don't think you were coming. This was obviously going to be the DLC, you know, and it was a terrible shame that we're never necessarily going to get to see that in-game. Although they have said it's probably going to be handled through extended media such as comics and novels. It just isn't going to be the same to see Quarians, you know, in-game again. It's a real shame that, you know, this stuff they built on as a starting point, which is what it was, isn't going to be, you know, necessarily built on. So story aside, the gameplay mechanics of the game were, to be honest, the finest yet for the series. You know, the combat system was incredible. The way you could tailor it to pretty much any style gameplay you want and kind of switch between playstyles on a whim was incredible. You know, the way you could go from fast pace, you know, guns blazing, throwing biotics around, and biotics were their best, you know, toss people up in the air and slamming them down, knocking people flying, dodging around, all that kind of shit, to then suddenly switching to, I'm going to hang back, I'm going to cloak, I'm going to hack enemies, hack through their shields, going to snipe them with a sniper, was really, really cool. And it's like I kind of had a sort of a mix between that up close and personal aggressive and hanging back being a bit more tactical. It was, yeah, more enjoyable, definitely. And it was incredibly fun to kind of shape a build, you know, during the game as it went on, shape what I felt comfortable with. And that was helped by the new crafting system for armour and weapons. So armour had stats that, you know, it could increase your tech powers, or it could increase your biotics, or just increase your damage with weapons. And it was finding, like like a build, like an RPG build for a character in a Mass Effect game. It's like that just didn't really happen before, and that was incredible to have that, and it was really cool. And there were so many possibilities for weapons, and you could basically make weapons like, you know, they didn't have the reloads, they just had like a cooldown system, much like Mass Effect 1 if you wanted, stuff like that. And yeah, it was really well done. Oh, having an open Tempest to walk around was incredible. You know, Normandy had the stupid load screens, or the elevators, they just slow you down. Whereas this was, you had the whole ship, but you could walk around it as much as you wanted, up and down, multiple layers, through doors and outdoors, everywhere, all over the place. The whole ship was just open in one instance at once. It's incredible. And it had these amazing views, the windows, you know, unlike in the original Mass Effects, there was a tiny little viewport window with tiny little fake stars that just looked horrible. Whereas this, you had these great big giant fucking glass windows. You could see out of space. You could see in the cockpit this giant fucking viewing window. You're basically standing on glass. Stars are below you. Planets are in front of you. Where you are in game in terms of what planet you're at, or if you're at the Nexus, you can see that physically in front of you. It's so cool. Really well done that was, and it really made you feel like, you know, you were an explorer in the unknown, and it was so cool to do that. Really cool. But again, there were issues with that. The gameplay as well. The AI of squad mates was a little bit lapsed. You couldn't change what they did. You couldn't tell them what to do as much as previous games, which felt a little bit pulled back. It was more about you and less about your squad mates. They were just kind of there as fire support, which was a bit disappointing. A lot of people had a bit of disappointment about that, and that's a shame. Don't know why they really did that, because they still let you have the ability. You just couldn't really do much with them in game, command wise. And flying around space was awesome, but it got tedious having to wait as you flew between planet to planet, because you had to physically do it. Which at first was like, the first few times was cool, and then it got boring and tedious having to sit and wait while you flew. It's something they fixed in a patch. They actually patched it so you could skip those flights, which was a welcome change. But I pretty much finished the game by that point, so it was like, oh. But in future playthroughs that would be very nice. So why was Mass Effect so negatively received? You know, so poorly received that future development would just stop, like it has. You know, EA and Bioware just pulled the chain on it. Just, you know, stop, done. Ultimately, it was like many games have been in recent years, or of all time, or anything, films, games, a lot of shit. It's a victim of its own hype. You know, when any game series, you know, an existing game series has a new release upcoming, there's a whole history and expectation built on it. You know, the Mass Effect series was well esteemed, despite its controversial ending of the third one. You know, people expected good things from another Mass Effect game and were hyped to hell. I personally was, and a lot of people were. You know, and in the months leading to release, you know, all the previews and gameplay trailers point to it being just another Mass Effect game with refinement of a great series, you know, and a new direction and location, yes, but ultimately it's cool. It was Mass Effect, just refined and improved, and that's what they did. You know, it was that. It was a new galaxy and a new setting, new characters, completely kind of ditching the old ones, and I was setting, you know, completely new, separate, but in that same kind of universe. And obviously there was references to other, you know, minor characters, you know, minor references to Shepard you hear, and Liara, very, very briefly, but that's it. You know, it's a new, we're moving on, and that was the point. They're moving on, leave the trilogy behind, we're done, let's move on to something different. And it was more in depth for the character, you know, catered to the character, like I say, the playstyle thing and the gameplay, the crafting and making a build, and really seeing more about the gameplay side of it. The gameplay, they got spot on, you know. Ultimately though, on release, it was overshadowed by negativity surrounding, yes, the facial animations, of course, but also the roughness around the edges of the whole thing. You know, the dated and repetitive style of side content. You know, a large majority of fans of the series were happy to accept that these were part of Bioware, you know. Bioware are known for horrible animations and kind of boring side content in recent years, but they kind of wanted more Mass Effect. That's what I wanted, ultimately, and I was, you know, I was satisfied by the game, and the main story, I loved it. But yeah, ultimately, the majority of mainstream players that weren't necessarily fans and just play games for what they are, with no necessary preconceptions of what they're expecting or what they've played in the past. You know, new people come to series. When you have a AAA game like this with this kind of esteem, hyped and hyped and hyped and hyped and hyped, ultimately, if there's things wrong with it and you're not necessarily a fan, or you're kind of a bit skeptical, there's a lot of people who are very skeptical and didn't, you know, were very upset at the ending of Mass Effect 3 and were kind of, I don't really know what's going to happen. Were very, very largely outspoken and vocal about their problems with the game, you know, and sales figures proved it. You know, it didn't do very well. You know, I love my time on Andromeda, and I'm a hardcore fan of the series. You know, it's difficult not to be biased myself. I'm trying to put myself in the eyes, in the shoes and body in general of the common gamer. And I know it sounds all casual. No, not casual, just the common gamer who hasn't necessarily got, you know, a love for a series, who plays games and loves games, no different to anyone else. But, you know, there's games I've played that I've not been fans of the series of, that maybe I've been a bit kind of nah about, but fans of the series will love them. But even as a fan, I can see there were faults with this game, and some of them were glaring ones. You know, the facial animations and just horrible jankiness of stuff, characters and stuff, was horrible, and it was very dated and not very professional. And although they did kind of improve on it in, you know, the months after with patches, you know, it's still a very dated way of doing it. The overall issue for me though is just, like I say, is that padding out of content, you know, and the way they've kind of slipped into a sort of easiness Bioware have of just not really caring as much about side content as they have in the past. A huge open world, or many worlds in this case, that is full of, you know, tedious repetition is nothing compared to a refined story, you know, with a character-driven experience that, you know, you have far more involvement and immersion in, and you know, you feel much more part of, and just that's just more satisfying for me than just a great big open world with nothing in it. And that is ultimately for me why it kind of is disappointing, and that combined with the facial animations and stuff like that, just it was like enough was enough kind of for players. While I'll like the game, I agree, it wasn't necessarily a outstanding game. No game's outstanding though, but you know, it's a difficult one for me, it really is. I love the game, but I can see the problems with it, and I can see why ultimately it's got to this, and it's really upsetting. that it's got to this point where a developer can say, or a publisher can say as well, it didn't sell well enough, the reception wasn't good enough, we're kind of done with it, we're putting it on hold for now, we're done. No DLC, which they clearly had plans for and probably had stuff written, just gone. And that will probably be a book now, so it will be there, we'll still hear those stories probably, but it's just a shame, a real shame. So is Mass Effect dead? Absolutely not. And that's not just me hoping, despite how it performs critically, the series is still a massive IP for Bioware and EA. It's when you say RPGs and story-driven narrative stuff, one of the first things that comes to your head is probably Mass Effect a lot of the time, because it's just such iconic stuff with the way what Mass Effect did for story and choice and stuff like that. Nothing had ever done that before. What Mass Effect 1 did, with multiple endings and stuff like that, had not been done that much. And the way you could carry your choices through the multiple games, and importing your characters and stuff like that was incredible. While it didn't ultimately have the payoff that people wanted in 3, the whole ride was enjoyable, and that for me is why I think that name is something to hold on to. Bioware's full attention now, for the time being, is Anthem, of course, and with that you can already see signs of them improving as a developer. Although it is effectively an MMO shooter, and it's kind of a Destiny, EA's Destiny or Bioware's Destiny. Obviously it's going to be more refined towards an MMO, so it is going to have repetible quests and stuff like that, but that's the point, because you're grinding for gear and stuff like that. It's not necessarily a story driven experience, and it'll be vastly different to Mass Effect. But you can already see improvements in terms of just the way they're doing animations, faces look believable and really cool in the gameplay we've seen. Just the movements of characters when you're getting in and out of your mech suit thing looks so cool and really smooth and a lot less janky compared to the horrible jankiness of Mass Effect. This is of course also the main Bioware team doing Anthem. Andromeda was a side team, which I didn't actually know. I never knew that. Yeah, Andromeda was a side team. It wasn't the main Bioware team. The main Bioware team was working on Anthem, and so it was them kind of being, here's Mass Effect IP, do it what you want, kind of. And while I say they did make some very good strides, ultimately they kind of got lazy and fell back on the old easy thing to do, which was pad it out with repetitive side content, not really bother with updating your way of doing animations and stuff, and just sticking to what rather than trying to be a little bit more innovative. And that's a stupid word thrown around, all innovation and stuff, but they weren't necessarily innovative with Andromeda. They kind of played it safe a bit too much, and what they knew. And for a new game and a new trilogy, I think they probably could have done a bit more innovation. But I have high hopes for the future, I really do. Casey Hudson is now back at Bioware after leaving. He left basically just after they started working on Andromeda, although he wasn't working on it, obviously. Basically he left as Anthem was being worked on, and I was reading a few things saying how it was nice to come back now as Anthem's almost finished, and he's been away for a few years. Basically he left at the end of Mass Effect 3 and now he's come back, and ultimately, although people moan at him for the ending of Mass Effect 3, people forget he made Mass Effect. So you wouldn't have Mass Effect at all if it wasn't really for him. He is like he was the lead on Mass Effect 1, and was the real push for it. And so yeah, it has a fondness in his heart. He's expressed his love for it on Twitter, and he said it's something that he couldn't not work on again. And I think that combined with just quite a few years break, I mean it's going to be years, I think. We've got Anthem, of course, and quite a few years of support for that with DLC and whatever they're going to do for it. I think we're probably going to have another Dragon Age sometime down the line. Whether that'll be another smaller team doing that or not, I don't know. But I think ultimately, when they learn from the negative backlash for Andromeda, the failings it did, and then they compare that with games like The Witcher and stuff like that have really done good things for the industry in terms of RPGs, and learn from their mistakes, I think probably in about maybe within the next 10 years, we'll probably have another Mass Effect, you know, with far smoother and better animations, less mundane, boring side quest structure, you know, and probably a bit more of a feel of the original trilogy, more possibly with Casey Hudson in charge again. I think it's something we will probably see one day. It will be down, you know, a while down the line, like I said, probably within the next decade at some point, but probably towards the end of the decade. But one day, Bioware will return to Mass Effect. Thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.